Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I've got a video covering the 2024 edition of the Halloween game mode, Monster Mash. What this is going to be is a bestiary video of the tanks. So we're going to go through the tanks as they are listed in the article on the website and talk about what their powers are, and then show you some gameplay showing off the powers and how to activate them. If you do enjoy the video, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe down below, as it really does help out the channel. And yes, I'm not going to show full replays of the tanks. What we're going to do is just show some clips of how to use the abilities and how you get around with them, because there's always a lot of questions about, well, I've just got the Kaiju. What does the Kaiju do? You know, I've just got the Arachnid. How do you use the ability for the Arachnid? Well, hopefully we'll cover that in this video. Obviously, it will be chaptered for the tanks down below, so you'll be able to see and skip to the tank that you want to see. Maybe you want to see what all the abilities are for the tanks that you might face in the mode. Who knows? But it will be chaptered down below. So we're going to start off with the Bestiary, and as you can see, the first tank on the list is the Spectre, which is mode exclusive, as it says. It's a little tank that basically, as you can see, during the brief time each year when the window to the spirit realm is open, every tanker can command the Spectre. It welcomes all into its ghastly embrace. It moves eerily quickly, making almost no contact with the ground, and it fires globs of ectoplasm and a high rate of fire, or a high rate of terror, you know. This tank this year is very, very good because it is super fast. The gun is super accurate. It fires very, very quickly. And it's got tracks that have like 600mm of thickness. So if people shoot this thing in the side and they hit the tracks, they do not pen. It's a thing. It is a pretty damn fun tank to have, and it is one that is free for everybody. You don't have to have any monster tanks whatsoever. It is a tank so that people can just have a bash in the Monster Mash game mode without having any of the tanks that you either have to pay for or earn, which is always nice. This tank used to be one of those vehicles that was okay when it first came out, the mode, but then it got power crept by all of the vehicles coming in, and it was really not very good, and they've buffed it quite a lot to make it usable for the free-to-play players, and it is a really, really solid tank. And here it is running around in the Monster Mash game mode on Hell's Highway, and this is just what the Spectre is like. It is just a barrel of laughs. It's one of those tanks that you just can YOLO about, have a bit of fun with, and you can absolutely shred in this vehicle. So we're just going to go after this Gorynych, and you can see what it's like. You just RBRT, lock on, and just absolutely go wild in this vehicle. And you can see how fast it fires, how fast it shreds. As long as we don't get set on fire by this Gorynych, we'll be okay. But if anyone shoots normal rounds at you and they hit the side of this vehicle, a lot of the time, like I said, they will just do track damage. They won't even blow your tracks off. They'll just do track damage and bounce. And when people are firing at this thing, it can be pretty frustrating to shoot at the Spectre. If you make sure you are shooting it at it in the side, aim high. Do not hit the tracks. If you hit the tracks, you're not going to do any damage, and naturally, you will bounce if you hit the tracks. And one thing to note for the Spectre is there are certain tanks that it does struggle with, and that is something like the Revenant's Crafts Panther, because it cannot RBRT onto a Revenant's Crafts Panther, because the way the Crafts Panther is, as you can see, it doesn't pop up on the hood, and that means that you struggle to hit it while you're on the move, and also, because the Crafts Panther doesn't take much damage when you're shooting it in the hull, but takes a lot of damage when you're shooting it in the turret, it makes it extremely hard to actually get the max damage off on a Crafts Panther, whereas they can shoot you quite a lot. As long as they are not hitting your tracks, they will be able to do quite a bit of damage. You're also seeing some of the shots hitting the tracks of another Spectre there and doing nothing, and that's the way as again, we just took another hit. That's the Spectre in a nutshell. One of its counters is something like the Crafts Panther, where you can't lock on, and you have to hit the turret to do a lot of damage, and it can just shred you pretty easily. But that was the Spectre. What's next on the list? Well, in 2016, the next monster vehicle released was the Lycan T-71. It's a pretty fun little light tank to play in Monster Mash, because as you can see, as soon as the Lycan T-71 finishes loading its ammo, it enters Lycan mode. It receives enormous boosts to its speed, handling, rate of fire, accuracy, becomes invulnerable to fall damage, which is quite funny, and the Lycan T-71 returns to its normal state and loses its boost once its ammo clip is empty. So be careful when you are firing the clips of the Lycan in Monster Mash. What you want to do is when you go in on a target, fire 5 shots, and then run away to safety and reload then, because otherwise you become very vulnerable and very easy to take out. So that's just something to bear in mind with the Lycan. And as you can see with the Lycan, what we're going to show off here is the fall damage. So we're jumping off the cliff on Himmelsdorf. On our side, no damage taken. And that's just what the Lycan is good at. If you can jump off cliffs, you can lead people to their deaths, which can be so funny. So we've driven up behind the Bellerophon, and it's like, hello, sir, let me just dump my clip. We know there's no threat of him turning around to get all shots into us or anything like that, and there's nothing else to pressure us. So I'm happy to drop the whole clip, and you can see we are no longer speedy, our gun is no longer that good, and we're just a little bit slower. We're just going to wait for that reload, which is really not too bad. It does reload pretty quickly, the old Lycan. And then, once we're reloaded, you can just see the gun handling all of a sudden becomes very, very good, and we can dump the clip once again. And that's just what the Lycan is good at, but once again, once you've fired all of the clip, you become exceptionally vulnerable, and that is your weak point, which is why when you go in on people, you want to fire 5 shots, and then run away. If you go full YOLO mode, you want to fire 5 shots, run away, and then click your reload button to be able to get a full clip in, and then you can just get away and go dish out damage somewhere else, and you can stay safe. But that was the Lycan. What was next in 2016? Well, it was the Revenant Crafts Panther. So it's a panther. There's obviously a Revenant, right? It's come back. So the Crafts Panther, as a way to deceive its prey, when not moving, the Crafts Panther appears as a destroyed tank that doesn't reveal its position when spotted. It blends in with the numerous tank corpses that are littered around the decayed battlefield, which is why there's so many of them as cover. It may move slowly, but it's also nearly impossible to track. What else would you expect from the dead come back to life? So yes, it basically does not get tracked, the Crafts Panther. And also, it's not spotted on the HUD. So you can get spotted in the Crafts Panther, but you aren't on the HUD and nobody can actually see you. Which, going back to that Spectre replay from a minute ago, you can see exactly what the Revenant is like to anybody. As soon as the tank moves, it lights up and you can see it. But when it's sat stationary, it's really difficult to tell the difference between a real Crafts Panther and one of the scenery Crafts Panther, which can lead to some really memey situations like this. So that Roswell didn't notice me shoot him. Now, I'm completely stationary, I'm using my RB button to lock my turret, and I'm staying perfectly still so that I'm not spotted, or he can't see me. The other thing this vehicle has, which you may not know, he's realised, by the way, because I moved my turret after I fired. The one thing you also, it doesn't have listed, the Revenant's Crafts Panther, is you have 2 types of round. You have the standard round, which is fairly similar to a standard Panther tank round, which is 200 damage and fires pretty quickly. And you have this shotgun round, which you just saw me hit that guy for 800. Now, the shotgun round is exactly as it sounds. It's a shotgun, which means that it has a very limited range. It has 120 meters range. So if you try to use that shotgun round at distance, it will not work, which is why it says out of range and the reticle goes white if you load the big alpha round and you're trying to shoot someone really far away. So that's one thing to know. And once again, you've just seen the memes of the Crafts Panther. It can work like a charm. This guy hasn't a clue. He hasn't a clue. A bit of a visual bug there means that I can't shoot him. But these guys don't know where I am. Look, this is the Crafts Panther in jail. You can see their Crafts Panther. I can't see him on the HUD, but I can tell it's a real-life Crafts Panther because he's moving, and he lights up when he moves. But I'm staying perfectly still. He can't tell whether I'm one of the scenery tanks or not until I turn and go, surprise! And slam him for 843. I lock up, but I think the game is up. He realises it's me and starts shooting me, and that's when everyone will realise it's you, right? And your hit point starts to disappear. Because once people locked on to where a Crafts Panther is, they will come after you because it's like, there he is! And they come and shoot you. But as you can see, we've just shot the Monsterjager with the shotgun round for 500 odd, killed him, and now we're loading the next shotgun round to go after the Crafty Panther. And that's it. The other thing is, with the Crafts Panther, is that if you shoot them in the hull, you will not do much damage. You have to shoot the turret front or the turret side to do a serious amount of damage, as there is a damage reduction if you shoot the hull. But now we've switched to the standard round, and as you can see, the standard round fires much faster, and we got to finish that guy off. But that's the memes of the Crafts Panther. What was next in 2016? Well, they did release 3 or 4 tanks in 2016, and the next on the list is the Gorynych KV-5, which is a pretty solid tank. It used to be absolutely insanity because the fireball effect was mad. It's not quite as good now with the amount of really good abilities there are in Monster Mash, but it can still be a lot of fun. And that's because its abilities are just like the mythical dragon that gives it its name. The Gorynych KV-5 breathes fiery destruction. Not only can it ignite nearby tanks with fire breath, which is one of its things, it can also spit powerful fireballs that do HE damage. And as if that doesn't make the Gorynych KV-5 formidable enough, it also regenerates health slowly over time. So when you've not taken damage for a certain period of time, your health will regenerate in this vehicle. And also, it's got 3 types of rounds. The third round on this tank is the Fireball, which we're just about to show here. As you can see, it's got 200 meters a second shell velocity, and it loops shells, which can be really handy because you can auto-aim and fire over ridgelines, like on Grim Graveyard, and you can hit people that you can't see, which means you can set them on fire with that round. You also have this second round, which is 1,038 meters a second, which we've just failed to use, which can also set people on fire. It's more of a direct fire shell than... There we go, we've just set that guy on fire. More of a direct fire shell than the Fireball round. And you've got the Dragon Flames, which have 22 meters of max range. So you have to use that super, super close. As you can see, I can't hit that guy at that range, but once I get within 26 meters, I can. So you've just got to be careful with the Gorynich's rounds. And as you can see, my hit points are starting to regenerate. If you look at the hit point bar, we've not taken damage for about 10-15 seconds, and we're starting to regenerate all of our hit points, which can be really, really handy. So we fire the Fireball effect, and because we were quite close, it didn't really matter. But what I'm trying to show off with this third round is the fact that, again, it does loop up. And again, you can just auto-aim and fire it over ridgelines, which can be memey. So you can see, whoop! If it hit, it would have set that guy on fire, just like I did to the Inferno. But yeah, that's the Gorynych. And next on the list is the Kaiju OI. Now, this tank has a couple of abilities, and as you can see, in true Mega Monster form, the Kaiju OI shoots lightning-fast electrical bolts, so it does around 300 to 400 damage with the electric bolts that it shoots, which is its main cannon round. I think 375 is its alpha. And you release fiery atomic breath that causes heavy damage to tanks foolish enough to get close to you. So it's fairly similar again to the Gorynich's effect, that you can fire a acid breath almost, is what it is. But you don't set people on fire with that, and you only have a range of 50 meters. But it is extremely deadly if they get close enough to you to use it. Naturally, as you are an OI, you are pretty slow, though, so it can be quite difficult to use it. But it doesn't have a reload. You can just switch to it and use that when you need it. And as for defense, in addition to its ability to repair its modules at supersonic speeds, it boasts an immunity to fire damage. So this is the natural counter to the Gorynych. It cannot be set on fire, the Kaiju OI. And yeah, if you have any modules get damaged, they repair super quickly too, which can be pretty useful. You also have the multi-turret system on the Kaiju, which can be, ever so slightly useful if you catch people out in the side and rear. But the Gorynych, as main cannon, is pretty useful. It does quite a bit of damage. As you can see, 369, we just hit that Roswell on the move for. But this is what the atomic breath, which is listed as flames, but this is what the atomic breath can do. You can see we're struggling to get it to work against the Bellerophon, but as soon as we got within that 50-meter range, we are starting to shred the poor guy's hit points. And it does some serious damage. Now, naturally, for anyone wanting to get away from this thing, all you got to do is get around it and just get a decent distance away, because it does take a wee while to reload the main cannon. But this Bellerophon's just stuck in the hell depth that is the atomic breath, and is just, sadly for him, He's like, no, what is going on? My hit points. And you are doing module damage with this as well when it does go through. It does sometimes take a bit of time for it to register that it does do module damage, but when it does get going, oh boy, it can be super satisfying. But naturally, it is an OI, which means that it is very slow and it's a bit difficult to get close enough to be able to actually use that. So you can see we load the main cannon, we've got 300 alpha, we put it through the Roswell, and I was just thinking of finishing them off with the secondary, which you can see it's a multi-weapon system, so we can fire that, but sadly, we just mess it up. We should have just gone instantly for the atomic breath, but I'm just faffing at this point. Get it going finally, and, well, sadly, yeah, we don't get a chance to use it against the Roswell. But that was the Kaiju's abilities. And next on the list was 2017's first tank, which was the Dragon Type 62. Now this is a funky tank to play, as the Dragon Type 62 has the unique ability to teleport around the map using spirit portals. Whether it uses them to escape pursuit or surprise enemies, the portals are open only to the dragon. So there's little portal spots on the map where the Dragon Type 62 can go through. And when it does go through those portals, if it's lost HP, it will regain some, which can be pretty handy. So as you can see, here's one of the portals on the map. Poor driving from me. But just before we go through the portal, we get set on fire, which meant we actually dropped down to 1600 hit points. But the moment we went through the portal, we regained 300 of those hit points, and our fire instantly got put out. Now, you got a pretty nice cannon on the Dragon Type 62, or the Awakened Dragon Type 62, as you do have 224 pen on this gun, I should say, with his 280 damage. So if you can lock on, get your shots in, you can do quite a lot of damage with the Dragon. And what you want to be doing is playing run and gun. So you can see me go for that Lycan. That Lycan is deadly to me, so I'm just going to run away from him, regen some of my hit points, and bam, I've got more hit points back. And that is what the Dragon does. But you do have to be careful with those portals, because they do literally have, it's pure RNG. It's pure RNG as to where you will end up, as they can literally teleport you anywhere where there is another spawn point on the map. So you could go through one of those portals and find yourself in safe territory at like A4, or you could end up right in the middle of the enemy spawn at J4 too. It's completely RNG, and it's something you got to be very, very careful of. This tank is best played as run and gun, and always having in mind that you're going to go after a target, but once you go after them, know exactly where your exit point is in a portal, so you can get into that portal and teleport, get yourself to safety, and regen some of your hit points. Next up on the list of tanks from that 2017 period is the Hollenhund M4190. Now, with every bit of health that the Awakened Hollenhund loses, its ferocity increases, its reload speed, aim time, and handling all increase dramatically as it takes damage, and it becomes an even more savage beast to behold. So basically, the Hollenhund just gets better the more damage it takes, which means it's an extremely difficult tank to make the most of in terms of its abilities, because naturally you become really deadly when you've got no hit points, but if you take one hit, you will die, which is a struggle with the Hollenhund, but that is the ability. And as you can see in the replay, naturally, you start off as a very plain Hollenhund. You only really get the flame effect when you fire, but the more damage you take, the faster it's going to fire. We've got a 2.1 second reload at the minute, so we take more hits from the Spectre, and as you can see, our reload is now 1.9 seconds, 1.5 seconds, our handling's getting better, our aim time's getting better, but this is the sort of situation where it does struggle as a tank, because yes, we're getting faster at firing, yes, we're getting more maneuverable, but we're dying because we still can't keep up with some of the vehicles, which is where the Hollenhund becomes very difficult to use, because you've got to lose all the hit points to get the special ability. But that also means you have to play really carefully, which you can't do all that often when you were also losing all your hit points in the first place. So the Hollenhund is a very difficult tank to get the most out of its ability. And now we're moving on to the 2018 set of monster tanks, and this one is the next on the list, and it is the Bog Horror. And the Bog Horror is an amphibious atrocities ensnaring shell ammo traps the enemy in vines, immobilizing their tracks for 3 seconds. Additionally, the Bog Horror's height advantage not only strikes fear into the hearts of enemies, it also allows it to shoot over obstacles and take advantage of positions on the battlefield that other vehicles can't reach. Yeah, that's not really an ability, that's just because it's a tall tank. But its ability is the fact that this vehicle has 2 types of rounds. It's got the standard round, which has 188 pen with 320 damage. It fires very quickly. Its actual DPM for a monster type vehicle is pretty nice. It fires at like 4.5, 5 seconds, something like that, which is really good. But you have a secondary round, which is this ensnaring shell, which I believe is called the mulch round or something like the... Oh, no, the mulch shell is the standard shell that you fire. The ensnaring shell, which is this ensnaring shell, yeah, naturally, as it says, is the one that traps people for 3 seconds. So you can stop tanks in their tracks. Now, this is a counter to most of the light vehicles. So this is a counter to vehicles like the Spectre, the Lycan, the Dragon. You can stop them dead. And for a lot of those light tanks, it means that they basically die, because all of a sudden they're stopped dead in the middle of the enemy tanks as they're YOLOing, because that's what they do, and it can be curtains for them. So at the start of this replay, we are loading the Roots round, and I was loading it because of that light tank that's running around, but what we're going to do is actually shoot the Nightstalker. And as you can see, Roots go up around the Nightstalker, it locks him in place for 3 seconds, and now we've switched to the standard AP round, or the Mulch round, and as you can see, it fires very, very fast. It takes about 11 seconds to load the ensnaring shell, but only 4.2 seconds for the standard AP shell. So you can actually do a lot of damage very, very quickly. So we put a shot towards the Spectre. We bounce off its tracks because, like I say, the tracks are very, very good. Got this shell going in to lock this guy in place so that our friends can shoot him. So he's starting to run away. You can see how fast the Spectre goes. We lock him in place. That means that hopefully our team should be able to get shots into him, and we switch back to our standard AP. And in fact, it gave the opportunity for the Inferno to ram that Spectre to death. But this tank can rack up damage very quickly with the standard AP rounds, and if you see any light tanks or stuff like that YOLOing about, just use the mulch round, or the ensnaring shell, sorry, lock them in place, and then switch straight to the AP rounds and fire away and do some serious damage. And again, you can lock vehicles down like we have done to this Bellerophon. So next on the list in 2018 was the Wraith Panzer 58. Now this is again another funky one to play. It can actually be really fun to get the most out of the Panzer 58 Wraith, and that's because, as you can see with the Wraith Panzer 58, it possesses the uncanny life leech ability. Every bit of damage it does to an enemy allows it to leech life from that very tank and heal itself for that same amount. In other words, the ratio of damage to health gained is 1-to-1. Anyone challenging the Wraith faces daunting odds. So you've got 2 types of round, one that will deal damage and one that will deal damage but also leech some health back. Now this situation in the gameplay is the perfect scenario to show off the Wraith. We've found the creature, we shoot a normal AP round that does 300 damage, we take a big hit from the Wraith, and as you can see, its reload speed increases with this life leech round, and we can start to penetrate this guy and get our HP back. We are now firing very, very quickly, straight through his lower plate, constantly doing 140 damage. We're now back to full health. Now we've got full health and he's missed his shot. We switch back to the standard rounds. We may have just done an extra... We just wasted a life leech shell. But now we've loaded the main round. You can see it fires much, much slower. But we are doing extra damage to him. We can keep farming him. Now we've taken damage. We reload the life leech round. And here we go, Mr. Life Leech. He may have done damage to us, but we're regaining our hit points. Now, we only have 4 shells left, so we do have to be careful. So what I decided to do instead is, because you've got to watch that life leech amount of shells, I'm reloading my standard Shadow Blast AP so that I can go after this guy, and when I go after them over this ridge line, he misses, we put a shell through his low plate, do extra damage, and then we farm the rest of his hit points with the life leech, regaining my hit points, and finishing off the creature. That was the perfect situation to show off the Panzer 58 Wraith. That ability can be so good to use and so ridiculous, because even though you've bled loads of hit points, all of a sudden you can do a lot of damage very quickly, but also at the same time claw all of your hit points back, leeching your life back into the game, and you can have a lot of fun with this Wraith. But from life leeching abilities to 3 lives, and that is 2019's Inferno Chimera, which is a pretty fun tank to play. So this is one that is a caveated tank, and that is that you are very different in your 3 different lives. The Inferno Chimera will respawn for a total of 3 lives, each with its own ability. The first life, which is Goat, which is purple, so that's how you tell it which life it's on, because it's got a different colour underneath the vehicle. Purple is quick repairs and intense ramming power, so you can do some serious ramming damage with the Inferno in its first life. The second life is dramatic gains in engine power and turret rotation, and camouflage, so it's harder to spot, its turret turns rapid, and it is super mobile in this second life. And in the third life, it gains fearsome piercing abilities and relentless reload times. So essentially, it becomes a lot easier to go through the enemy vehicles, and your reload time is a lot better. Now, I'm pretty sure it used to be a lot quicker in the Inferno, in terms of its reload, but it still gets a lot faster than the standard reload of the other 2 lives, because the other 2 lives are about 14 seconds, whereas it's about 10 seconds for this third life. So, with the first life, as you can see, you have way better ramming capacity. Now, that means you can do stuff like this to Wraiths, or to Spectre, sorry, where we're just grinding this guy's hit points down. There is not much you can do about this. We end up finishing him off with a slight tap. And that's because this thing's ramming capacity is so much better. Oh my god, that Asterion. Yeah, it's so much better. And the thing is, if you can actually ramp it, I've rammed a Bellerophon for about 1,600 when he's full pelted into me as well, and not taking too much damage myself. So this guy's going to ram us at full health, full pelt, sorry, 705. Now, we weren't going at full speed either because he tracked us, but it means it can do a good amount of damage with ramming. Now, you're going to see the redeployment now of the Inferno, and now you can see the turret rotation is faster, and just how much more mobile this vehicle is. It turns so much faster, and it travels so much quicker. And that is pretty much the Inferno's second ability. You can see it also seems to aim much quicker as well, which is not listed on the abilities, and I'm pretty sure that's the way it was supposed to be a bit more with the third ability, but hey-ho. It does turn very, very quickly, as you've seen, and it can outmaneuver the light tanks with its mobility. And that's where the strength of the second life is. Now, you only have 800 HP, and someone did question this when I was streaming, saying, 800 HP, is that it? Right? Well, yeah, but it's because you have 3 separate lives, and that totals up to 2,400 HP in total, which is a lot, which is why it's 800 HP per life. Now, as you can see, after we revive after being killed by the Lycan, there's a bit of a bug where you basically keep the mobility of the previous life until you stop. But the moment we end up stopping in the Inferno, you'll see the actual true mobility of this third life. And we can see now with the reload, I've just switched to see what the reload will be, and we've just stopped. Now our mobility is much worse. It's a bit of a bug with the Inferno with that, but it's a 10.4 second reload, whereas before with the other 2 reloads, it was 14 seconds. Now, that means it does reload that bit quicker and you have that bit better DPM. But to be honest, I think the other 2 modes are, or the other 2 lives are the better of the lives for the Inferno. This one's just sort of a bit, right? So it does aim in that little bit quicker though. We're just waiting to see if the Lycan comes across, but he doesn't. And yeah, you generally have that better reload. You don't really need to see it shooting things as, well, you're shooting a Lycan, you can see what it was like with the reload, and it is the fact that it is quicker. So there's the Lycan, look, aiming, put the shot in, 417 into that Lycan, and that is all 3 lives of the Inferno. And now we're on to the next memer in the list, and this one is the Bellerophon Centurion Mark 51 RAAC. Now, this can be a memey tank, and that's because you do have 3 separate rounds, which all have their own abilities. You've got the Impaler round, which is a standard ammo that fires spears at people, which just does standard damage. Basically, it's your standard damaging round, 226 pen, 230 damage. But then you have a Force Push round, which is a spear that hits enemies, sticks into them, and pushes them away. And you have a Skewer Pull, which is a spear that hits enemies, sticks into them, and pulls them towards you. Now, this means you can pull people off of hills, you can pull people off of ledges to their death. You can also push them to their death too. And then you can just do standard damage to be able to do damage to finish people off. Now, this can be used in conjunction with other meme tanks like the Asterion or the Roswell, and you can get some really funny physics moments with the Bellerophon, and it can be really hilarious. So with the Bellerophon, if you set it up right and you put in a crew that's got controlled impact, you put a spore liner on it, you can get some really filthy rams, and that is by using the skewer pull, which we are using right now. So it's like, hello, Mr. Spectre. Come here, my son. You can see we're pulling him along. We've got him in our face. Use the skewer pull. Ram him for 840 odd. It's like, sir, you are not getting away from me. Pull him in again. Another 800. And we only lost about 200 for that as well. And he's just not having a good time. We use the impaler round to finish him off, because we can get the extra damage. Now we've got the push round, sorry. You can see we've pushed the Wraith away because he's trying to get shots at us, and we're just using the push round at this point to try and get him gone. He's been knocked over by the Asterion. We push him while he's ramming him, which then knocks him flying into the air. But sadly, he manages to reflip. And again, we're just keeping this guy pushing. We should really use the pull round at this point to pull him into the Asterion. But while he was on the move, I was trying to get a really funny physics moment, but it just wasn't happening. So it's like, get away from me, Mr. Wraith. We push him again, switch to the skewer pull, so that hopefully I can pull him into the Asterion. We do pull him into him, and it actually kills the Wraith on the Asterion, because that's what it can happen. You can get some really funny physics moments, sorry, by doing that. And once again, we're using the wrong round here, but this is just what the 3 rounds do. You've seen it do damage to finish off the Spectre. Use the pull to get ramming damage on the Spectre. We've just stopped that Bellerophon from getting away by pulling him into the Asterion, and he couldn't get away, and we were pushing the Wraith around with our push rounds. Like I say, you can use this tank in conjunction with other meme vehicles to have a hilarious time. Like if someone beams up another tank with the Roswell and you use the push or pull in that situation, you can get some really funny moments. But that's enough about the Bellerophon. We'll talk about the Roswell later and some of the memes you can get with that. What I'm going to do now is talk about 2 tanks that we're not going to show any gameplay of, but that's because their monster mode abilities are also available on 2 other vehicles, and that is the Fangula AE Phase 1, which is playable but no longer available to purchase or earn, same as the Dozer M48A2 Round Panzer, which is playable but no longer able to earn. And that is because the Fangula has the ability the same as the Arachnid, and the Dozer has the same ability as the Asterion. Now, these 2 tanks are Hot Wheels licensed, trademarked video tanks things. Okay, they're licensed tanks, which means they're probably never going to come back, which is why they're playable but no longer available to purchase or earn. And that is purely because they are Hot Wheels vehicles that was on license, and they don't have the license for them anymore. So we'll talk about their powers when we get to the Asterion and the Arachnid. So the Creature is next on the list in 2021. Now this vehicle, the Creature's Awakening, has granted it supernatural piece of equipment that allows it to call down a chain of lightning onto enemies in its path. To use this power, aim the Creature's gun at a location on the map and press right on the D-pad and watch the storm wreak havoc. Now the Creature has a very hard-hitting gun. It's got 240 pen on its standard round with 780 damage, and its second round has 95 pen for 1000 damage, which can do some serious damage to lightly armoured vehicles. So it's got a very big hard-hitting gun, which takes a while to reload, so you're an alpha bomb vehicle. You don't really have much armor, as you're seeing here, but we also have our special ability, which is a piece of equipment. So if you use right on the D-pad, you will be able to aim at a vehicle. You can see the path there that I've just placed down, and what is going to happen to that guy is a load of explosions, as you've just seen happens, and any tanks that get in that ability or in that path of destruction will end up taking quite a bit of damage. It's basically an AoE weapon, and that's how you use it. You want a big bunch of tanks to be sitting there, ready to take hits, and that'll come sweeping in and do some serious damage if it hits. The problem is it is a very difficult ability to use, because you've got to have the right circumstances for it to be truly effective. And that was why the creature can be a little bit frustrating. So that was the creature, and now we're on to the next on the list, which is the Death Chariot from 2022. Now, the Death Chariot unleashes the Death Chariot's awakened powers by sicking your enemy-seeking skull missiles, yes, you read that right, loose upon your opponents. So the Death Chariot basically has 2 different rounds on its standard gun, which have 175 pen on the standard one with 420 damage, which takes a wee while to reload, which are scythes, because naturally it's the Reaper's, it's the Death Chariot, it's the Grim Reaper's chariot, and you've got explosive ones which do 550 for 61, but you also have ATGM skulls. And yes, you heard that right, ATGM skulls. Look at it floating above my tank. Hello, Mr. Bog Horror. We fire the standard scythe, doesn't go through. Well, we've got this big bomb of a skull. Fire it straight at that Gorynych, 638 damage. But that's not the only weapon for the Death Chariot, as you do have your standard round, which is, like I say, you've got explosive scythe and you've got standard scythe. So we've just fired an explosive scythe at the turret of the Revenant Craft Panther, which is weaker. But now we've got a 5-shot auto-loading ATGM skull salvo, which does less damage on these skulls. They only do about 300 when they pen, as opposed to the big alpha bomb of the big skull. But you've got more of them that are easier to guide, and you can use them on multiple targets. As you've just seen me use against the Craft Panther, we managed to do quite a lot of damage to him, which is probably similar to the big skull, but we can use them on individual targets as opposed to just having that one big bomb of a skull. And it's a really unique ability having these ATGM skulls, and to be honest, it looks so cool. I mean, look at that. That is one of those things that it looks sick in Monster Mash when you fire those skulls. And you can just fire the scythes, as you've just seen with the standard scythe. Sadly, it bounced off of the Gorynych, but when it fires the scythe as well, the scythe round looks so cool as it goes. It's one of those things. The Death Chariot is a really cool vehicle. It's not the best Monster Mash vehicle in the universe, but it can be very memey with those skulls and the scythes. So next on the list is the Arachnid. Now, you know how I was talking about the Fangula AE Phase 1 and how another tank had the same ability? Well, this is the Arachnid. This tank was brought about so that people could purchase or earn in future monster hunters the ability to use the same monster ability that the Fangula has, but because you can no longer purchase and earn that, they'd made this tank so that you still had that tank's ability to have access, because it's a pretty cool ability. So, if you like to deliver your enemies an unforgettable ending in each battle, press the handbrake to jump in the air and come crashing down on them. So this vehicle takes no crush damage, and the way you use it is use the handbrake button to then leap your tank in the air and crush your foes. Now, this means that the button you use to activate this ability will be different depending on your controller scheme. So for me, it's to press the left stick in, but it is completely down to your controller scheme as to what button you have to press to activate the skill for the Arachnid. But it is a really cool skill. Or ability, I suppose. And as you can see, when you've got someone in your sights, use the handbrake and crush. As you can just leap in the air and crush your foe, which, like I say, can be really memey in the Arachnid. But one of the other things you can do is load the HE in this vehicle, fire it at someone's tracks, as you can see, track them in place and go, well, I'm going to hop on you now, sir. Oh, that can happen very easily, which is why you want to use the HE rounds to track people in place. Because if you manage to track them in place and then get them stuck, you can basically take all of their hit points very, very easily. So we tried to get the Wraith, it failed, but you're not getting away from me that easily now, Mr. Pharaohs Fury. As we crush the guy to death. And once again, we're trying to get a tracking shot on the Wraith, but we pen him with the 60 penetration this vehicle has for 515 damage. And I just want to track him again so that I can jump on him. But if he's going to sit still, well, we're just going to crush him. And you can do that for the memes, and that's what the Arachnid is for. It's really funny when it does work out like that. Although it doesn't happen all that often because you have to be really close to people to do that jumpy damage. And again, speaking of tanks that have the same ability as another tank, that is the Asterion, which also was brought in because of the fact that people still wanted to use the Dread Dozer's ability, but the Dread Dozer will no longer be available to purchase or earn because it's a Hot Wheels tank. And yes, the Asterion blade you want to put to good use by ramming it against your enemies and sending them flying through the air. So the Asterion does send tanks absolutely flying with its Dozer blade, and it's really quite funny when they do go flying. You do have a standard round that does 240 damage with 205 pen, so you can put some damage out while you're waiting for your ram to come back. But yeah, the ram is memey. But it doesn't turn very quickly, so you've got to hope that someone runs into you. Just like this. And as you can see, we send him a little bit flying there with the little bit of ram that we do. But as soon as people are starting to be more mobile and get around you, you really start to struggle in the Asterion because you don't turn very fast, which can be a bit of a pain. But you can still go after people with the standard round. Like I say, you're doing 240 damage, so you're still putting out a bit of damage while you're waiting for the ram to go back in. As you can see, we're trying to get ourselves turned to hit the Hollenhund, but it's a bit awkward because when you are against a building like this with someone, it just basically, it doesn't do much at all, and they end up wasting your ability with the ram because, well, they just don't go anywhere. So you've got to be a bit more mindful about where you do and don't use the ramming ability of the Asterion, and we're just going to show what happens with it again. So we see all the enemy tanks in the distance. It's like, Mr. Spectre, I'll come and help you. Well, okay, I'm still going to ram someone, and we're going to go watch them fly. It's like, hello, Mr. Arachnid. Boom, as he goes absolutely flying. And that's just the memes of the Asterion. That ram is hilarious when it works. And you can use that in conjunction with other stuff as well, like the Bellerophon. So that's the ramming memes of the Asterion. But now we're on to the probing memes of the Roswell XM66F. Now, this tank is, again, quite a lot of memes for you to play, and that is because you've got the awakened power, so declassified and approved for release pursuant to EO 1023, okay. In addition to its standard positron blaster shell, the Roswell can fire a second shell, tractor beam. When this shell hits, it will initiate a horrifying experience for all tanks in the immediate area, similar to HE ammo's radius of effect and alien abduction. So if you have 2 or 3 tanks that are hugging each other, you will be able to beam all 3 of those tanks up, which can be funny. During the abduction, UFOs will warp in and appear above each of the enemy victims in the area of effect. The tanks will then be lifted into the air and suspended, receiving damage every second they're in the air. Tanks struck directly by the tractor beam will take more damage than the tanks indirectly affected. So the tank you hit directly with the beam will lose loads of HP, whereas the secondary tanks still lose HP, but not quite as much. After several seconds, the victim tanks will be released and will fall to the ground. Fall damage is cancelled during this time, and crushing damage is reduced by half. The encounter will then conclude, assuming the extraterrestrials have gotten what they came for. Now, this tractor beam round, which is your second round, can be many memes. We've seen the Crafts Panther. He is a man that we know is there. And it's like, hello, Mr. Crafts Panther. How is it going? Oh, up you go. And there's the UFO probing the Revenant's Crafts Panther. And he just comes back to Earth with a plum. And it's like, hello, Mr. Revenant. I know where you are. And I've got a second tractor beam shell for you, sir. You're just going to raise up to the air. Now, the reason I'm doing this to this Revenant is the fact that I was expecting maybe some of my team to shoot the Revenant. So clearly, they'll know that this Revenant is the real thing because he's been tractor beamed up, and hopefully they'll shoot at him. But you can see we've got the positron blaster rounds in now, which is the standard AP round that this vehicle has, so it can still put out damage once you've run out the tractor beam rounds, because you can only carry a maximum of 10 of them. And you can see it puts out about 400 damage when it rolls well, and we can just keep putting damage out instead of using the really long reload, which is for the tractor beam. But yeah, this tank can be memey, and it can be memey in conjunction with other vehicles as well, which you're going to see here. So we're going to use our tractor beam against the creature. You've got to be careful where you fire that tractor beam, because clearly it wasn't going to get the full effect because he hit the bridge. But we're going to get tractor beamed ourselves. And that's the kind of meme that can happen with the Roswell, because the Asterion rams us, and look at the meminess of the physics here. We go absolutely flying, and yeah, that's just the kind of thing you can do in conjunction with other vehicles. But enough about the meminess of the Roswell. What about the tank that came out with it in the same year? And that is the Pharaohs Fury Ramses II, which The awakened powers of is fear the fury of the restless ruler. The awakened version of the Pharaohs Fury Ramses II uses the flamethrower mechanic to unleash a special secondary shell, the Scarab Swarm. This visually unique shell will engulf enemies and deal damage over time while it's fired, a fitting end to any battle enemy who would oppose this Pharaoh's eternal reign. And yes, this Cold War tank can join the other awakened monster tanks in battle, only in Monster Mash mode. So the armor on the Pharaohs Fury is very, very good, and its awakened ability is the fact that it can get the flamethrower mechanic that was put on stuff like the Senjutsu and the TVP VTU and the Churchill OK, etc. But it unleashes as a Scarab round, which you're going to see here. And this is just what this Scarab round can do. It acts just like all of the flamethrowers, and it looks really cool in the fact that you've got all the little scarabs fleeing against the Lycan. But if you can get up close to something like a Lycan and any other tank really, you can just whittle a load of hit points away using that flamethrower mechanic, and then just switch to your standard rounds, which it's a pretty decent gun as well. And as you can see, you can put in damage for about 400 plus and just keep the damage flowing. You can use either the flamethrower or that main cannon to have a lot of fun with the Pharaoh's Fury, and that's basically the awakened ability of it. It's a very bog standard tank in the fact that you just have that flamethrower, which is a scarab. You know, it's a Scarab Swarm. Have a lot of fun with that flamethrower, and then go to the fact that you've got pretty good armor as well. You can bounce quite a lot with it and dish out the damage with the standard round if you need to. And now we're going to move on to one of the new Halloween vehicles that has come out this year, and that is the Nightstalker. So the Nightstalker is Carmilla's vehicle, and it is basically a vampire. So what does it do? Well, it's awakened powers. The Nightstalker's awakened power is called Bloodlust. Once you fill your Bloodlust meter and activate it, you'll enter a heightened state in which the tank becomes even more effective. See it like a vampire, getting stronger by feeding on its victims. So in the charging state, this is the baseline state in which you will fill your Bloodlust meter. Your meter will passively fill over time to 66.6%. Yes, that's the actual value. Memes. Damaging tanks will help fill your meter more, so every shot you pen, the meter will fill. And destroying a tank will instantly fill your meter and unlock the Bloodlust enhanced state. Your tank fires in single fire mode in the charging state. Once you hit Bloodlust, you have to hit left on the D-pad, so your Bloodlust meter is full. You can activate its power by pressing left on the D-pad. Bloodlust lasts for 20 seconds. When you activate Bloodlust, bats swarm around your tank, and your tank is visibly glows with a deadly red glow, so it's really obvious when they are in Bloodlust mode. Enhanced vision awakens, or activates, I should say, making enemies much easier to see. This will also highlight players playing the awakened Revenant's Crafts Panther. So it's a counter now to the Crafts Panther, which nothing could tell where a Crafts Panther was. In Bloodlust mode, this can. It will light up as a little blue dot. You'll see that in some of the footage. Your tank fires in double shot mode, shooting from both barrels at the same time while in Bloodlust state. And all of your tank stats are heightened, so Bloodlust enhanced. If you destroy a tank prior to activating Bloodlust, you'll receive an additional performance boost while in the Bloodlust state. So basically, if you kill something and then activate Bloodlust, you'll get a better performance out of it. And in the cooldown state, when Bloodlust ends, you enter a cooldown period which lasts 10 seconds. While in the cooldown, your meter will not charge over time, so your meter won't go up for 10 seconds after Bloodlust is finished. Doing damage will not fill the meter either, so just simply doing damage will not fill the meter in that cooldown period, but destroying a tank will bypass your cooldown and instantly fill the meter to unlock Bloodlust again. So basically, if you kill a tank, Bloodlust will automatically be re-enabled straight away. So here's the Nightstalker in the gameplay. So you can see the meter is passively filling at the minute as we missed that shot on the Spectre. You can see the little bar just below what would normally be the siege mode indicator. That is filling up. So we just penned a shot on the Spectre and you can see, once again, it fills up. We put another shot into the Spectre. It's now at the point where we're so close to having Bloodlust. We've got to pen one more shot to get that Bloodlust. And with a Lycan chasing after us, yes, it's going to be a good time. Or maybe not, as we bounce on the Lycan naturally, frustratingly. That's just the way it goes, because the gun handling is pretty poor outside of the Bloodlust mode. We put a shot into the Lycan now, and our Bloodlust meter is ready. And see this Bog Horror? Oh my goodness me, he's going to get both barrels. We activate Bloodlust mode, and it's time to go. Unfortunately, only one of those penned, but now we're going 688. Hello, Mr. Bog Horror. He hasn't realised what is happening, and this is just how fast the tank can eviscerate something in Bloodlust mode. It's pretty mad. To be perfectly honest, it's pretty mad when it's in Bloodlust mode. When it's out of it, it can be a bit of a pain. And actually, because it is a limited traverse turret on the Nightstalker, a way to deal with it is just to get around it as quickly as possible and keep away from its guns, because the track traverse on the Nightstalker is also not the quickest. So as you can see, our bar for that 10 seconds after the Bloodlust finished did not fill up whatsoever. And that's meaning that we had a big period of time where we couldn't do anything. We got spotted when we crossed that D line. And I wondered, I was like, I got spotted there, but I'm not sure if that was the light tank. And we are currently, we're currently still spotted. So we're currently searching for a Revenant's Crass Panther. We have Bloodlust mode. So the moment I get spotted, I'm going to pop Bloodlust. We get spotted. It's like, okay, Bloodlust. Let's try and find the crafty. Which crafty is it? We've got a good 20 seconds to find him, if we do. There he is. That is what happens to a Crass Panther with Bloodlust. They light up blue. You can see exactly where they are, and that is the counter to the Crass Panther that it's never had. And now, if you need to find it and you're in a Nightstalker, you can just activate Bloodlust if you get it, which naturally you've got to have Bloodlust, and especially if the crafty is the last tank alive. And you didn't manage to get a kill, likelihood is you might not even have Bloodlust to go find it, which can be a bit of a pain. But yeah, that is what the special abilities of the Nightstalker are. And now for the last monster tank of the video and its special abilities. It is the second tank that has come out this year. It is the Monsterjager. So as you can see, with the awakened powers, this tank utilises the Monster Hunter's arsenal to take on a variety of beasts. Therefore, each gun will be more effective against specific enemies. If you wish to succeed with this tank, you will need to figure out the correct weapon to use. The ammo arsenal can be seen below, along with the monster tanks they are best suited to fight. So we've got the Holy Water Cannon, which is best against unholy and undead creatures, which is the Revenant's Crass Panther, Death Chariot, Wraith Panzer 58, Pharaohs Fury, a Spectre, and a Nightstalker. If you use the Holy Water Cannon, it will be more effective and do far more damage against these vehicles. The Trophy Taker, which is Silver Bullets, is best against lycanthropes and other beasts. So the Lycan, the Hollenhund, the Inferno, the Dragon, the Gorynych, the Arachnid, the Fangula, and the Kaiju. The Trophy Taker, which is the Silver Bullets, will do far more damage against these vehicles, and this round will do far less damage against all of the others. And the Stake Driver is the Crossbow. It is best against monsters that are weak to piercing damage. So Dozer, Asterion, Roswell, Bellerophon, Bog Horror, the Creature, and the Monsterjager. The Stake will do far better against those and do more damage to those than it will against the other vehicles that aren't on that list. Now, the pain with the Monsterjager is trying to remember which weapon is effective against which tank. And to be honest, you're probably not going to remember. So what you want to do is just keep spamming the different weapons against the vehicles, because they all still do damage. So if you can just keep spamming each of the 3 weapons against every vehicle you'll face, you will still do a lot of damage, and you'll take their hit points away very, very quickly. And naturally, you'll eventually get to a round that does a lot more damage against them than some of the others. So we've got the Piercing Bolt now. We've got it against the Spectre. We put a shot in for 224. We switch to the left one, which is the Silver Bullets. We now are using the Holy Water, which is supposed to be quite good against the Spectre. And as you can see, it is trashing the poor guy. We switch to the other weapon because it was loaded and finish him off. We're now against the Pharaohs Fury, which we bounce. But again, we use the Holy Water, and we are flicking between the weapons we need to use at each time against each of these vehicles. It's best, because of the fact that it is going to be quite difficult to remember what each is good against, which is why I've covered it, because hopefully you'll be able to know now what is good against what. But the best thing to do when you are going against these vehicles is just to do exactly as I'm doing right here, which is just cycling between each of the 3 weapons and keeping the damage flowing into these guys as much as possible, because that way you will end up getting a lot of damage very, very quickly, and you can overwhelm your opponents pretty damn fast. The one thing you've got to be very, very careful of with the Monsterjager, however, is the fact that the turret traverse is very, very slow. So if you do get up close and personal, like you just saw against that Bog Horror, it can be very, very easy to get outmaneuvered and then struggle to actually be able to do any damage. So that's it for the video, everybody. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, as you've been watching, to see what all the Monster Hunter abilities are, what all the tanks can do, and see in action so that you can judge for yourself which one you want to play, or which one maybe you want to pick up if you just want to pick up a tank just for monster mode. So as always, everybody, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.
A great success!